Oh, Canada. Whenever someone mentions my home country, it is always about the beavers, the timmies, and most importantly, the red maple leaves in the fall. As someone who has been proudly living here for the past decade, I can proudly proclaim that I have never seen any fall foliage. How is that even possible? It is literally on the flag. No, it is high time to change that. I finished my 4th box of Timbits for the day and hopped onto an airplane, heading straight into the heartland of maple leaves, Ontario. And the journey began with a pleasant drive north of Toronto, and quickly I was approaching the town of Gravenhurst, the birthplace of an individual with a rather interesting history.
So the first stop here is the home of Dr. Bethune, and this is basically a dedicated tourism spot for every single Chinese tourist who used to plow this route between Montreal and Toronto. This is because, Dr. Bethune was actually born here, right here in the house behind me, and he spent basically his entire later half of his life helping Chinese Communist Party's People's Liberating Army during the Second World War. And unfortunately, he died on the battlefield because he was the only qualified doctor for a region of 10 million people. So when he got sick, when he cut his finger open and got a really bad infection, there was nobody qualified to even operate on him. And he died from an infection just within 10 days.
Following a local's advice, I decided to ditch the highway on my way to the next town, Bracebridge. And it turned out to be the best decision because this road was flanked by trees turning yellow and red. And I even get to see some local residents slowly making their way across the road.
I'm now here at Bracebridge, and this is one of the more important waterlogged towns. So right down there's actually a very important place where the water actually drops in a significant volume down to a lower level beneath. And here they fixated a lot of waterworks. So that's why this town exists. And it has been, one of those traditional wooden towns. You can see all of the old buildings all around me. There's also an old clock tower. Yay! What a beautiful town, especially in the fall. Now it's just covered with red maple leaves. Oh, it's gorgeous.
The highway continued north, and as it gets more and more scenic, it quickly drained the battery power from my camera as well as the vocabulary that I can use to describe beautiful road trips. And a few hours later, the drive ended at the town of Huntsville, with its famous big band at Arrowhead Park as a reward for such a hard day of work admiring all of the different views that we have had so far. But wait, don't you think that the day is over just yet? No road trip in Eastern Canada can be complete without a visit to a maple farm. Am I right or am I right?
And you can see here they extract syrup from the sap. Now you can see the kitchen they're doing it, and the machine. And here are the snowshoes used to maintain the grounds in the winter. And these are the buckets used to extract the sap. And as they said, 40 liters of sap will make about 1 liter syrup. That's why they call the syrup black gold.
finally, it is high time to settle in for the accommodation of the day. But no, we don't do hotels here when you're doing a road trip in Canada in fall. The point is to get as close to nature as possible. So how about some geese and a lake that is a little bit bigger than some of the smaller European nations? Oh, and don't forget a bonfire under the starry night after viewing the most gorgeous sunset, because that is how we roll here in Canada. Wakey, it is time for your morning foggy kayak ride. As the fog slowly dissipated from the lake, it is finally time to say goodbye to some of the local residents who are a little bit too shy to come out of the woods. After getting back onto the road, it is officially time to begin my 2-day adventure in the Algonquin Park.
Oh wow, what a beautiful day in Algonquin. I'm probably walking the least scenic part of the park, you know, by the highway, chilling with some leaves and... oh wait, I forgot to show you the other side.
But wait, this was just a small stop along the highway. It is not even one of the named attractions in the park. So I quickly hopped back onto my car and continued driving down the highway. I turned off onto a small dirt road, which I may add is not shabby at all, and then continued into an even smaller dirt road. After about 20 minutes of apprehensive drive, I eventually found myself at the side of a beautiful lake, and I am ready to explore Algonquin with its most famous site, a climb to the top of Booth's Rock.
my fellow leaves, rise. And listen to the nature sounds. Oh, this is just beautiful. It's ASMR time. The leaves are slowly falling, and you're walking on top of piles and piles of freshly fallen foliage.
Next stop is a hike around the famous Mizzy Lake. It is not too far, and let me skip the jibber jabbering and get straight to the beautiful views on this reflective lake. And I do not even dare to say that I have been to Algonquin without a proper picnic under the yellow foliage and by the lakeside. So I turned onto a small byway that is probably the most beautiful road in the world, as it is completely shadowed by falling yellow leaves, and the lack of passing traffic made the entire road blanketed with millions of yellow and red crunchy leaves. Driving on this road was like heading straight to heaven, and I cannot possibly admit it in the video that I drove it back and forth 3 times just for fun, because it is just this stunning. And the road eventually led me to a small day use area by one of the thousands of lakes in the park. And needless to say, the view is pretty spectacular as well. But what really surprised me was a little piece of forest just next to it, completely decked out in red and gold. Whoa, 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 hold on there, buckaroo. You're not even famous on Instagram yet. So, shall we move on to the next place? It is time to walk around one of the many bogs that carved out a very unique habitat here in the park. Some of the rivers branch out into thousands of little streams, carving out vast swamps inside the forests, thus giving birds, fish, frogs, and many other inhabitants of the forest a very special place to relax and reproduce. But this is just a warm-up exercise for what is coming up next. A quick hike to another prominent trail that has a beautiful cliff overlooking the entire park. And based on our Canadian ingenuity, we aptly named it a lookout trail. And finally, the last stop of my journey in Algonquin took me all the way to the east end of the park, where a large open-air museum sat against the eastern gate. It documents all of the logging history, present, and future here in the park. And yes, I meant present and future. This is because actually about a half of the park is owned by logging companies, which may sound absurd until you realize that this park was actually founded by a few logging companies. They banded together and carved out a large section of the Ontario province in order to prevent farmers from clearing out this entire piece of land and turning them into grazing farms. And that is why logging has been going on here in the park since its very first day. And thankfully nowadays, due to clever and strict management, none of these trees you see today will ever be cut down to make furniture or paper. And while walking around the museum, I found some really interesting tidbits of the logging history here in Algonquin.
If you're a farmer in the 1800s, chances are you are only able to feed your family and not likely that you're gonna clothe them. So the only one of the very few extra opportunities for you to earn cash is to work in a logging camp. And this is where you will stay. 2 men together sleep in the upper bunk right here, and then they will just eat down here in the bottom bunk. 52 men sleep here throughout the entire winter, and they go out for logging early in the morning and only come back after dark. And these horses will be used to drag the logs into the clearings and then onto these sleds. Because it's winter, they'll just use these sleds to transport these gigantic logs onto the ice of the rivers or lakes and ponds. And eventually, when spring comes, these logs will be drifted downstream into civilization. And every day at the end of the night, a horse will be used to draw this entire machinery all the way down the road, because it needs to plow out all the extra stuff. So in order to keep the roads that they used to drag all of those logs with to be very smooth. And during the morning, the first thing they would do is actually use another horse to drag this entire gadget and use these large barrels to pour water down into the roads so that they will form a thin layer of ice. So this will be as slippery as possible. And both of these are proclaimed to be the world's coldest and most miserable jobs. In a lot of places, a log jam is almost inevitable, no matter how much help you get for the loggers. So, a lot of these people came up with a genius solution of building a logging dam and a logging chute, as seen here. And during the spring, sometimes some of the rivers does not have enough water. And what they'll do is they use a dam to jam up enough water and then flush all of them down once so they can clear the rapids down below.
After successfully touching a red maple leaf, I avoided the disaster of losing my Canadian citizenship. However, there is only one place in this world where I can reclaim my lost status. So I quickly hopped back onto my car and drove all the way east. And my destination is Ottawa, the capital of our beautiful Dominion. And here I can finally be a real Canadian. Just thinking about that gets me going, but that is a story reserved for the next part. And I'll just give you a little bit of a teaser, and it involves this gigantic pumpkin, this view, and this random building that is totally not relevant or important at all. So hit that like button and the subscribe button down there, and I will see you in Ottawa.